everyone, and welcome back to the Sunday League podcast, brought to you as part of our UK NFL Fantasy Football Network. I'm Samit Paul, and as always, I'm joined by TSL's co-host and co-commish, Jack Cowling. Jack, we've known each other for quite a while now, and I have always told you that the NFL is the best league in the world. So Tottenham, Villa, whatever, don't care. Giants whooped Dolphins in the preseason this weekend. It's official. I'm calling it now. This is real football. None of that soccer nonsense. How are you, mate?
Yeah, it's one of those, is it? You wait however long for a sport to come back and then you serve that up and it just like, oh, I've got another year of this. And it just hurts more with age, I'm sure. It's just one of those things that eats into my week even more and stuff. So, but let's part of that, as you sort of say. It's the secondary sport for this year, shall we say, with fantasy being the number one. So, let's get talking about some more exciting stuff.
I mean, if this season goes terribly for both of us, we might have to bring out another podcast to drown our sorrows every week. So hopefully the NFL is a bit of a saving grace for us. But So, right, lots on the agenda in this week's pod. As always, we've got our final round of one burning fantasy question for each team across the NFL. It's over to the NFC South and the NFC West this week. And we'll also make our predictions on their over-under wins for the season, along with our TSL crew. We also pick out Super Bowl winners for this season, as well as discussing some of the other contenders. But we'll recap the big news from across the league over the past week as well. But first, Jack, let's start with the one burning fantasy question. And we shall begin in the NFC South with the New Orleans Saints. My one burning fantasy question for the Saints is Jordan Tyson, risk-reward. Do you pass on him due to his injury concerns, or is he still worth a high draft pick? Now, just for context, Tyson is expected to miss around 2 months after suffering a hamstring injury. I'm no doctor, but a hamstring injury for a wide receiver, it's not what you want. It is the NFL. Injuries are to be expected. We're seeing that right across the league again this summer, but it's just Tyson's injury history. Now, I know it's not all his fault, but he's had multi-ligament knee injury. In college, he sustained a fractured collarbone as well. But in terms of this one, he had a hamstring issue flare up around the combine and his pro day. He's currently ranked 33rd wide receiver in sleeper ADP. So I just wonder, if our drafts were still to be done, would you be hesitant in selecting Jordan Tyson, or is it perhaps just part and parcel, young player getting over these niggles, and long term, he's a top fantasy asset?
It's difficult. Like you said, I always feel for these players when it's just the same injury repeating itself. That's obviously the huge alarm bells, isn't it? It's sort of where you're like, oh God, this is just going to be an ongoing issue. But when some players, they just have this bad luck, don't they? Like you said, sort of collarbone, appreciate obviously hamstrings more muscle, but ligaments. And it's just that thing where you're like, is it just, a bad stretch and actually, fortune will favor them or look more kindly on them in the future? It's a difficult one. I think just huge contrasting views, I suppose, if it's a redraft or dynasty. Obviously, ours is dynasty. So for me, it might slide him slightly, but probably not too much of where I would have him on my big board. I think I'm probably still taking him over every other sort of rookie wide receiver, probably outside of Tate and such. But you've got a few receivers. I think I'm right in saying he's 22. I might have got that completely wrong, but I'm sure when I saw. So then you've kind of got those slightly older wide receivers like Williams on the Lions, Brian Thomas, Marvin Harrison, who are only a couple years older, obviously have a bit more, they've kind of got a bit more proven ability in the NFL. But also, again, they probably don't have the ceiling that he does, I wouldn't have thought. So that's probably the ones where I start thinking, who do you pick there? That they maybe come into the equation a bit more than maybe a few weeks ago where I would have certainly picked him above all of those guys. But I think he slides a bit. As I say, redraft, I'm probably not touching him. Certainly not until, pretty late on, just because you sort of 2 months. Once he kind of gets up and running, I don't know, how long is it going to take? But it's just such a shame because, there was such conversation around him and stuff. There was one of the New Orleans reporters who was sort of saying he wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this year, if Tyson was the best player on the team and stuff. So you're like, fair play. That's pretty high accolades. But I think for Dynasty, as I say, maybe a little bit of movement, redraft. I'd probably start taking him out of consideration.
So for me, I just think from a fantasy football perspective, it can be so volatile already when your player's getting injured and missing a chunk of the season. Now, as you mentioned, dynasty-wise, as is the case for us in our leagues, I probably wouldn't let it bother me as much.
No.
You'd hope he gets to a place where he overcomes the setbacks, stay healthy, develops and grows into being an NFL player, and these are sort of in the past. But like I said, selecting a player who already feels like a little bit of an injury risk in a league like this where anyone can go down at any moment, it probably would make me think twice. And that's why I picked up Barry and Brown on the waiver wire in my league a couple of weeks back. And we'll obviously see if he gets a shot in Tyson's absence early on. But yeah, it would just make me think twice, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's the reasonable way to go. But as said, hopefully it is just a small blip, and he is on the field for a long enough chunk for us to see what he's about. Because the hype was there, wasn't it? So it'd be a real shame not to see it.
So the over-under for the Saints sits at 7.5. Apologies in advance to my guy Marcos from our Midlands League. He's not going to be happy hearing this, but unfortunately, I think I have them sitting at around 6 or 7 wins this season. So it's going to be an under for me. I've gone through the schedule. I do think there is a path to them hitting the over. I've got them going 0-2 to start the season. They've got the Lions and Ravens up front, but there's a handful of games on their schedule that I can see going either way. But how consistent is Tyler Shutt going to be? As we've mentioned, Tyson, but also Olave. Will they stay healthy all season? There's just a couple of question marks there for me, which made me go for the under on the Saints. What did you go for?
Well, knowing our good friend Marcos, I'm a lot kinder to him than you, so I went for the over. I went for over. As you sort of say, the injury did give me sort of a little bit of pause. I think before the injury, I was sort of envisioning them potentially being one of those slightly breakout teams, maybe having a top 15 offense. Again, if they've got one really proven, elite wide receiver already, got one up and coming in Tyson. It's obviously there. A-Chain is sort of a real weapon, especially in the passing game. I think he got 6 receiving touchdowns last year. So with him, a lot of, again, I don't want to talk too much about them because Marcus will just message in going like, you guys are talking nonsense, but because he knows them a lot better than us. But I think what I saw was with Shuck is that maybe if you can get him playing sort of the short and middle length of field sort of throws, that's maybe where he excels a bit more, which again, it looks as though they've kind of got the players to do that. The reason I went for over, similar to you, I had a quick look at the schedule, and I think it was week 3 to 10. They just have a really good stretch. They've got like 5 home games. They've got 1 international game and then 1 bye. So I just think in that turn, they could sort of turn that run into, if they can pick up 5 wins by week 10, I'd fancy them to go and grab another 3 in the second half. So I just quite fancy them. Obviously, the Tyson injury is a concern, but just that stretch of games and things, I could just see them kind of going on a little bit of a run early and then kind of just that snowballing a little bit of momentum and effect. And again, I think there was a little bit there last year to kind of feel as though they were a team moving in the right direction. I still think there's things for them to work out. They probably need a little bit more of quarterback pressure in terms of their own defense. But I think they're just a solid team and in a very even division. I think they might just get over that 7.5.
I don't know that the Giants are in that little stretch of winning games you're talking about. In our TSL poll, it was pretty close. 13 voted over and went with you, and 11 voted under. So a close split on the Saints. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers next then, and the burning fantasy question for the Bucs is Bucky Irving worth a punt at his sliding ADP? What are your thoughts on Bucky then, Jack?
Yeah, he's a strange one, and he had such a good rookie year and stuff, but there was real issues sort of last year. I think sort of, again, when you sort of look at some of his stats when it came to sort of, just his ability to sort of break tackles and yards after the catch and things like that. It was just sort of, I think his explosive run rate, yards after contact, missed tackle rate, it was just horrendous. And it's really put me off this year, despite, again, if you look over the span of 2 years, you're like, the median is that he's probably quite a good player and such. But I think I've seen him at sort of RB17 and he's sort of priced around Judkins, Brown, Chase Brown, Williams, Price. I've seen sort of those players either side of him, I think. And I think I'm definitely taking all 4 of those over him. I think White's departure was something that I was like, okay, that's quite interesting. But then I kind of feel like they've got a superior player. I don't know if you agree, but in Gainwell joining. So then all of a sudden I'm like, well, that doesn't look great for Irving as well, unless they can really kind of create that tandem so they both sort of flourish. So I think if he dropped down into sort of the later 20s and, you're talking more him with, I don't know, Pollards or like Krosky Merritt and people like that, then, again, I'll probably be like, you know what, he's worth the punt. But still at the level where he is, I just think he's probably the least appealing of that batch to me.
I completely agree with you for all the points you've made. So, yeah, it's a hard pass for me on Bucky Irving. Coming back off shoulder surgery in the spring, like you mentioned, you've got the addition of Kenneth Gainwell, who's been getting some pop in training camp. I would factor in the threat of Sean Tucker chipping in and possibly stealing some of those short yardage. So that's going to be a problem for him as well. But more importantly than anything, I also factor in Irving's style. And just like you mentioned, he's running quite happily, just receives hits and contact, barrels his way through the defensive line. And I'm just not sure whether he's going to be able to stay healthy, continuing with that approach. So no, I wouldn't have a punt on Irving. And like you said, he's 17th in the ADP list on Sleeper of running backs. And yeah, the names that came up for you are same for me. You've got your sort of Javonte Williams, Cam Scatterboom, and Travis Etienne floating around there or thereabouts. I would prioritise one of those guys if they're still on the boards. And as you mentioned as well, there's even better names further down the list in Judkins and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a pass from me on Irving.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
The over-under line for the Bucks is at 8.5, and I am once again going for the under. I have them in the middle of the pack when it comes to the NFC South. I think they're good for around 7 wins this season. I do love the Baker Mayfield of it all. I'll be rooting for him after all the contract stuff this summer. But for me, I don't think there's enough on that roster to be convinced. Like we've spoken about Irving. Yes, they've got some exciting young talents with Egbuka, Hurst, a couple of others, and the experience of Chris Godwin on offense. But I think we saw problems with them last season, and Todd Bowles could quite easily come under the cosh this year if they don't start well. So, yeah, it's an under for me on the Bucks. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm with you just on the under as well. I found this whole, the whole NFC South, it's sort of like they're all like 7-8 or 8-7. I don't know, or like whatever it works out, like the maths. I'm like, they're all about a 7, 8 or 9 win team. And it's just trying to figure out which ones. And yeah, I think for them, keeping Vita Vea is huge. I think all of a sudden that defensive line could be really scary. And I think particularly with Ruben Bain sort of in the mix, again, all the reports there are, he's definitely sort of living up to pre-draft hype because obviously he slid to them, which was a load of good fortune for them. But yeah, I think their defensive line there looks pretty scary. And like you said, Godwin, you'd hope would look better a bit further away from his injury. Egbuka, everyone still has sort of high hopes on. I said Irvin and Gainwell doesn't start seeing sort of a highly fancy duo, but they could make it work. So there is, like we sort of said with Baker, had a really weird year, didn't he? Sort of almost like kind of weird career, I suppose. But like last year, he was sort of MVP conversation, wasn't he, at one point? And then I think he was the least accurate quarterback in the league. And I know he was playing for injury and stuff like that. So I just think with them, I only went under. I just think they feel like a team that's almost at the end of a cycle. I don't know. Obviously, once they won the Super Bowl and Brady left, most teams then would have quite a hard reset. And they didn't. They, with Baker and they kind of managed to manufacture sort of still being quite a competitive team and doing quite well and stuff. But it just feels like you said with the coach, with Vita Vea's obviously potentially went out, Mayfield, who knows what's going on there. I just feel as though it's kind of the end of the cycle, and I could just see it being, maybe negative momentum at some point spiraling into their season. So, I think that'll stop them getting over 8.5.
And the votes are in from our TSL crew, and 8 voted over, while 16 went with us and voted under on the Bucks. Okay. Next up, we are heading to the Atlanta Falcons, and the one burning fantasy football question I have for the Falcons is, will it be Tua Tagovailoa or Michael Penix Jr. who emerges as their QB1 over the course of the season? Now, for all the talk around Tua and the concerns over his past with concussions, and I know you'll be able to tell me more of this in terms of his time at Miami, obviously didn't go to plan ultimately. I did still think that this was a decent pickup from the Falcons. I even played with the idea of drafting Tua earlier this summer. But the more I think about it, Tua is Tua. We know his game. We know his limitations. And after a really good 2023 season, which he scored 284 fantasy points, we have seen him regress over the last 2 years. Obviously, he's missed a lot of time on the field in both with those concussion issues. But then Michael Penix Jr., he's also an injury waiting to happen. He's had 3 ACL injuries over the course of his career already.
Yeah.
I know he showed flashes as a rookie, which were really encouraging, but he wasn't exactly stellar before his injury last year. And we'll have to see how he fares on his return. But I think purely if it's down to age, who has the bigger arm to find the likes of Drake London, Pitts? I like the look of rookie Zachariah Branch as well. I just think I have to side with Penix Jr. on this one. What about you?
Penix Jr.'s, you'd hope that's probably who they want, isn't it, in terms of the Falcons? Obviously, Tua is just on this 1-year contract, and Penix was the guy that they used, reasonable draft capital on. It's just a tough one. I think those flashes I think a lot of people clung to them more than perhaps was actually on show. I think obviously Cousins was it was awful sort of thing, and he came in and offered a bit of steady play. So I think and again, then I think people wanted to, actually they've been really smart and well done sort of territory. But I think similar to you, I sort of, again, there were flashes, but I never really felt he was overly impressive. And then, like you said, last year obviously was an abysmal year, and like we were saying with the injuries and everything like that. I don't know, just from what I've read and a little bit, I don't know too much on the Falcons in terms of deep dives and things, but from what I've seen, it seems like Tua could start in the role, potentially give Penix a little bit more time to kind of get back up to full fitness. I've seen some chat that Tua should suit the system quite well there. It's the similarities to certainly sort of the outside game to what we did at the Dolphins and things like that. So it may kind of lean into a few of the strengths that Tua does have. But yeah, like you said, he's a faulty quarterback. Again, fine for a backup, absolutely. I think for Tua, but for a long-term starter, it isn't what you want. But again, in terms of who plays the most games overall, I think you're probably right. I think Penix Jr. probably gets there. But I mean, I don't know. It feels a little bit like one of those. Do you want to, I don't know, jump in the burning fire or in the freezing ocean? Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit, neither of them really make me wanting to put any bet, put my name behind either of them, to be honest with you.
I think I'll pass on both of them. So the over-under line for the Falcons is also at 7.5. There seems to be a running theme for me today, but I'm going under again. I'm not sure who's winning games in this division, but I put them at the bottom of this division along with the Saints. I think they've suffered some big injury setbacks as well. I know London's a baller. Pitts showed promise last season. But like we've mentioned there, I do question if the quarterback play will be there to allow them to win games consistently. So I went under. What you're saying on the Falcons?
Yeah, I went under as well. I wanted to go over just because, Robinson and London are just that good. Pitts is, obviously, hopefully back to what everybody hoped Pitts was going to be. I think they've made some good additions. I think, Callahan, their new offensive line, could be huge. In terms of his reputation, certainly before sort of Tennessee and his son ruined his reputation. Brian Callahan ruined that and such. He was revered as sort of the best in the league and such. And I think, as I sort of said, Stefanski's sort of preference for that outside run game Robinson should absolutely flourish in that, shouldn't he? So I didn't actually realize, just looking at a few of their baseline numbers for last year, that their defense was second overall in team sacks last year, which I was like, bloody hell, fair play. But then you look who got those sacks, and none of them are there for various reasons this year. So then I was like, well, that's massive. Their backfield is it's elite in terms of the defensive backs and stuff. So they've got pieces where you're like, you're so almost a really interesting and exciting team and such. But obviously that quarterback is just the overarching niggle. And when that seems so potentially subpar, I just don't think you can go for the over. I think their floor is right down there with the Dolphins. Again, you could see a world where, a couple of, injuries or really bad quarterback play or whatever. And they're right down there with us. I do think they're probably a bit more in the middle of the pack, but I see them more, as 5-6 wins maybe. So I certainly don't see them as 8-9, just as I say, primarily because of the quarterbacks and, as I said, some of the issues, the injuries and the issues they've got on the defensive side.
This one was one of the more one-sided polls we had across all the teams. I think only one vote for the over on the Falcons and 23 voted under. So I'm not going to out the one voter for over, but fair play to you.
We want a name. We want a name.
Right, so finally in the NFC South, we have the Carolina Panthers. And my one burning fantasy question for the Panthers is, what is Bryce Young's floor and ceiling? How do you feel about Bryce Young, Jack?
I like Bryce. I don't know why. He's sort of the latest of the sort of high drafted quarterbacks that's sort of fighting to turn his career around, isn't he? And yeah, and I don't know if it's because of his size and it's just a little guy who looks a bit more human like the rest of us, and I'm just pulling for him because of that. But character-wise, unless I've missed something, he's always seemed to be sort of made of the right stuff. I don't think there's been big dramas. He hasn't ever really kicked up a fuss. Yeah, as I say, I'm pretty sure there's been no major incidents. And, again, I think his play has sort of grown and as his confidence clearly has as well. And I think Panthers are in a decent place. He's got some weapons now that he's managing to build relationships with. I really like the sort of wide receiver duo. Obviously, I think bringing in Waller as a tight end as a passing option and things like that. So, yeah, I think, as I said, I think he's on his way to not a spectacular career, probably, but a solid starting quarterback career. So I'm pulling for him. I think. His floor is obviously proper unplayable quarterback free stuff if there is a regression this year and all of a sudden, he's likely out the team or whatever. But I think as a ceiling, he's maybe got sort of, I don't know, QB 12, that sort of territory, and, a decent sort of quarterback 2 in a super flex league. He's probably not someone you're ever vying to get as your QB 1. But yeah, as I say, QB 2 or a backup quarterback if you're not in a super flex. I feel fairly comfortable with that. And I'm sort of, as I sort of say, I'm leaning him towards being closer to sort of the latter, maybe holding steady in sort of the late teens, sort of, that quarterback 16 to 20, that sort of range. I think that's a fair place for where he should be. So, I'm excited to see him and, certainly rooting for him.
I share some of those sentiments, but I'll probably have him down a little bit lower. With 3 years into his NFL career now, fantasy-wise, he's had his best year last season, 229 points, which in half PPR put him as the 19th best quarterback. From where he was and the big question marks hanging over him as a rookie, I think, and a little bit in that second season as well to an extent, to where he is now, I think the Panthers can definitely feel a lot more settled about him. And I just think he's got plenty more to prove. He's got my boy Ted McMillan. I hope that link up really flourishes with another year together. Got Jalen Coker and Xavier Legette, Darren Waller, as you mentioned as well, added presence, experience at tight end. So I do think we could see Young continue to increase his points tally, but yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think all the questions have been answered as of yet. I could see him moving up a couple of spots at best in a good season. I think there are probably, about 19 to 20 better quarterbacks in the league at least. I think he's sitting at 26th in the QB ADP list in Sleeper at the moment. Which could possibly be the floor, to be fair, because I think there's a couple below him who could have good seasons, push him down a little bit further. But yeah, I don't expect him to pull up any trees this season. I think that's kind of the sentiment that you were suggesting as well. But I think the Panthers can be relatively sort of comfortable and happy with him at quarterback. So I think he's in line for a decent enough season. The over-under for the Panthers is at 7.5, and I have them going a touch over, barely securing a winning season to top the NFC South. I just think, like I said earlier, someone's got to win this division, and I think they can get a bit of joy in these divisional games. Even though I've just said that Young is an okay quarterback, I think he's steady enough to get them those wins. And yeah, just for the doubts that I've got with the Bucks, Falcons, and Saints, I think they could take advantage of that, get themselves around 8 or maybe 9 wins. What did you go for?
Yeah, I went for the over as well. I think, again, there's a little bit of, like you sort of say, like, right, if I'm going under there, kind of figuring out who would beat who and stuff. But I think Dave Canales, he comes off well to me. I don't know if you sort of agree. I quite like him and as a coach, and they've had quite a nice steady rise with sort of vibes seemingly being decent. I remember them sort of almost being the sort of mocking, kind of a couple of years ago, them really getting a load of stick of how the organization was run and everything like that was. I feel like they're in a stronger place now. That it's obviously injury issues that keep plaguing them. I think Skelton's knee injury sort of the headline of this summer so far. But I like that they swung quite big on the defense this offseason. I was surprised that the Jags let Lloyd leave. And, I think that's a great pickup for them. Like I say, Ted McMillan and Coker are a real sort of duo. Legette's a funny one because everyone keeps thinking, is this the year? I think he might just be a bit pants, if I'm honest. I don't know if it's ever going to come. But they've made other moves that I think add to their passing game. And again, Brooks, I've mentioned a few times in terms of running back, is someone that I still hold, some high hopes for if he can get on the field. So, like you said, Bryce's big year will probably be, decisive in what they do. But like I mentioned, I think all of these teams could be somewhere between 7 to 9 wins. And again, it's just sort of figuring out which ones you might think come out on top. And I think Panthers, are one of those that I think at 7.5, I think they'll come in over that.
The TSL poll saw the over get 11 votes, while 13 voted under. So not with us on the Panthers, unfortunately.
No. So generally, most people are quite down on that, on the whole South, aren't they? In terms of sort of, there's not too many teams there that people are seeing as a viable contender.
Certainly not. But I tell you what, we've got plenty of them over in the NFC West. And that is
segue.
I love it. That is where we are heading now. So let's begin with one of the favourites to win it all this season. And that is, of course, the Los Angeles Rams. The one burning fantasy question that I have for the Rams is, where is the right place to go for Devontae Adams? Where do you see being the best place for Adams to be drafted, Jack?
Again, I think this completely depends on the format that you play. And I think in a dynasty, as much as I love Adams, I just don't think there's that high appeal. Again, I think he's just at that age where, he's I don't know if this year will be his last, but there can't be too many more after that. So I think dynasty, it's just one of those where, again, if you go in to win the first season, if that's what your target is, you may be trying to pick him up a little bit sooner than you would. But I think in a redraft, he's sort of that perfect third receiver sort of pickup if you can get him in sort of the 5th round or so. I think he's just that sort of consummate pro, isn't he? He's easy to cheer on, which always helps when you got someone. And I think though there was clear tape to show that he's not quite the player he was, that's to be expected. There was still a really good output in terms, and I just think that's going to be really similar this year. So I think for again for me, redraft probably around the 5th round and such. But then again, sort of dynasty, I don't know, unless you're sort of tanking year one and you go and complete youth, I'd avoid him entirely. Otherwise, again, you're probably in that sort of round 8, round 9 sort of territory, depending on how deep your league is.
We are on the same page on this one as well. Adams has been a favourite of mine over the years. I've always managed to get on the board just at the right time beyond those sort of early rounds to land him, and he's always delivered. I was looking back, you have to go back to 2019 for the last time he scored under 190 fantasy points. And even though, like you say, he's getting on a bit, I think he's still got a big role to play for the Rams, linking up with Matt Stafford, being a menace in the red zone. I think he went in the 7th round in a couple of our leagues, and then a bit later in the other 3.
Okay.
So, I would say 7th onwards is probably fair from a dynasty perspective. And for the same reasons as you've outlined, really, grab your priority picks early, start building your starting roster. And then when you get to that stage of fleshing it out and adding some big scorers to complement them, I think Adams continues to come into that equation. To reiterate the point, though, he is 33 years old. Dynasty-wise, does that drop him back unless you're an immediate contender built to win now? But just like I say, looking back at our Midlands League draft, the one that I'm in, he went in the 10th there. And I would probably say that if I hadn't have picked up Neighbours and Tet early doors and sort of got my wide receivers in, I think I would have been in the market for a Devontae at that point. So I think he is primed for another big season. So we'll have to wait and see what him and the Rams have got in store for us. But I think he's still one to get.
Yeah, I've just taken him in a redraft, and I was suddenly like, have I taken him a little bit high? Like again, I was kind of going for a bit of a no running back build after getting Bijan Robinson with the 2nd overall pick, and then I've just gone for wide receivers basically. But no, I still, again, I know age catches up with him, but I expect him to produce. So I think he'll have another good year.
You cheating on me in TSL?
Yeah. This is the
additional redraft league.
This is the Southwest redraft. Like I think I mentioned last week, my only other league that I got going on.
Okay, fair. The over-under line for the Rams is at 11.5. What have you got for this, Jack?
I'm over. I think I've said previously I've had them down for about 14 wins. I just think, they got 12 wins last year, and that was Stafford at MVP level. So there is a little bit of is he going to kind of get to that standard again? But I just think he will. I just think it's it's a super team. The additions they've made this offseason, just make it a bit of an all-time sort of team. And I think they could just have a historically good year. There is the wide receiver depth is a concern. Like I've highlighted, obviously Adams, there's a little bit of age concern there. Puka, there's some mental well-being issues, I suppose is a polite way to say it, and all the rest of it. So you are a little bit like, oh, if one or two of them go down, what? But then I just think McVay is, for me, he's sort of the best doing it in the league at the moment. And so, I said, I think they'll smash that 11.5. I've got them down for around 14 wins or so.
Yep, I've got them as my NFC West division winners. I have that clearing them comfortably, so I've gone over. I do agree with you on the injury side of things. The one that I was kind of looking at was Matt Stafford. I know he's been quite robust over the last 3 seasons, making 15 appearances or more in the regular season in all 3. Obviously had a great season last year, 360 fantasy points. But if he can stay available, you've got the Williams-Corum tandem in the backfield. Nakura and Adams, again, like you said, if they stay healthy as wide receivers, great targets. And then looking at the other side of the ball, prayers up for those facing that defense with Myles Garrett added to the mix, potentially Aaron Donald coming back. I think we've said it before, both of us, that Jared Verse is a loss. I really, really do rate him. I think they'll miss him. But when you've got Garrett and Donald and the others that they've got in that unit, that is still a very, very scary defense. So I think they should top the division, live up to their tag as being one of the favourites to go all the way. And so, I definitely see them clearing this very easily. Yeah,
I think that's it. I think sometimes with these sort of mega teams, you can kind of get a bit bored of the narrative of sort of just saying that they're going to be really good. And it's kind of, well, actually, are they going to be? And it's like, again, I think there's just some that just don't overcomplicate it. They've got one of the best rosters, if not the best roster in the league. They've got one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in the league. It's just one of those things you're like, just go for the over. Don't try to overthink it.
Yeah, exactly. If you thought the Falcons vote was one-sided, this one will top that. It's absolutely unanimous in the CSL poll. 24 votes for over, 0 for under. So everyone is on board with the Rams winning loads of games this season.
The UK's smartest and best minds there working in harmony.
Exactly. Right, Seattle Seahawks are next up, and the one burning fantasy question for them is Jadarian Price. Is he RB2 level? How do you see Price faring this season, Jack?
Well, I want to say because I obviously traded for him recently, so a bit of bias coming in. So, I think the big sell is that he's going to get the workload early season, and if he does enough, Charbonnet is sort of showing he's quite well suited to an RB2 level role. But obviously, I think Price was obviously an RB2 behind Love as well. So it's just going to be interesting, sort of the way that they sort of figure that out, I suppose. But I think Seahawks, they always do give Charbonnet sort of red zone touches. So will sort of Price suffer like Walker did before him? I think PPR, you'd be a bit more careful going early on him because the report sort of suggests his catching wasn't the greatest. But I think half PPR, such as our league and such, is a little bit less concerned. But I've gone for him. He's sort of my young protege at RB3. I've got Montgomery, who is sort of more my traditional sort of RB2, I guess, in my dynasty. But very much with a Price in my mind overtaking Montgomery for that. But I think to start with, again, it depends on the makeup of your roster. If if you've gone really strong sort of elsewhere, but I think RB2 is fine. I think you're content if you've got him at RB2. I think you're more comfortable if you're like me. You've kind of got him at that RB3 sort of level. But I think there's enough hype and excitement to kind of pick him at RB2 as long as you're not going too early for him. That's the only thing I would say.
Your running back room sounds pretty strong, but it's no contest for mine. Obviously, Blake Corum, Cam Scatterboo. And then Singleton and McGowan in reserve.
Watch out, Midlands.
So I mean, the setup for Price looks good. Charbonnet's coming back from his injury. I know there's been a little bit of training camp talk around George Halani, but I really. I'm not sure if it's going to be that much from him.
No.
The Hard Knocks hype and the college tape from Price, there's obviously a lot of buzz around him. So I think the opportunity is there in Seattle to start the season, lay that marker down, establish yourself in the run game as their RB1, and then you can feel good about him being that RB2 level in fantasy football when Charbonnet comes back into it. But like you said, the conversely, other side of it is if he starts slow, doesn't look great in the early part of the season. Charbonnet was already annoying Kenneth Walker fantasy owners last season. So him coming back into the fold could obviously be a major problem. So yeah, I think the way he starts the season is obviously going to be very, very important.
Yeah, and the geniuses amongst our listeners will have picked up Charbonnet and Price just like I have.
Yeah. Good one, good stuff. The over underline for the defending champs is sitting at 10.5, and I actually have them just about topping that. So I went over, I think about 11 maybe. I think there is legitimate concern over Sam Darnold maybe regressing a little bit. I didn't think he had it in him to show what he did last season to lead them all the way. And part of me sort of argues the opposite way and thinks that must have done wonders for his confidence sort of moving forward. And he may build on that. So
stop doubting him sort of thing, isn't it? I think, because that was... So I sort of made a note of where it's like, it's still weird that he harbours this sort of, but it's Sam Darnold. Like, I mean, it's like, even after he delivered that. So
I think we'll see good quarterback play from him, obviously. Price in the backfield. I know JSN tailed off at the end of last season and a little bit in the regular season, but he's obviously an absolute superstar and still 304 fantasy points last season. Rashid Shaheed is a year in. Cooper Kupp is still there as that experienced head. AJ Barner is one that I'll be looking out for. Hope he becomes a bigger piece in that offense, given he's in my team. And they've obviously got a very, very serious defense still, despite some injuries. So I have them second in the NFC West, and I've gone for the over on this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Darnold was sort of the main question mark for me. I think when I looked at their roster, like you said, I think Shaheed will be a bigger part of their offense, which is going to be a really good thing for them. I think Clint Kubiak sort of leaving is probably the biggest loss I consider. Sort of over, they obviously lost like Kobe Bryant and Kenneth Walker and Mafe. So they lost a few players, but I still think they're so stacked on sort of 90% of the roster that I still want to bet against this head coach. Again, similar to it. I just think it's one of them. The roster's really strong. Coaching setup's really good. Obviously, a couple of new additions there, so we'll see how that shakes out. But I back McDonald on his hiring as well. So yeah, I went for the over. I just think that they'll get there. I haven't loved. So it's Terry Arnold, isn't it, that they're signing since they've got released from. Like, I kind of feel as though, I don't know, I thought there'd be a bit more backlash to it because, it's obviously quite a serious situation with him and everything. And, I know that they obviously need players, but has he been cleared? Or, again, I don't know if you know off the top of your head or anything like that. But, I was just like, when they signed him, I was like, and everyone's like, Seahawks have signed Terry Arnold, which, great fit. And I'm just like, but isn't he a wrong-un? Like, I don't know. And like, again, it's one of those things where I was expecting a bit more backlash, but I think him and Trayvon Diggs as well, they're obviously looking for a little bit in their backfield, but I just think, again, really strong team, really strong coaching. So I expect them to get over 11 wins.
Yeah, I don't think the outcome of that case has obviously been decided outside of the game in terms of the law. Like,
okay.
He's still facing the backlash of that and potentially a suspension from the NFL, but
because it was like kidnapping or something. Like, it was. I just remember it was like mental. Like, and I was just like, why is someone signing when this? Again, that's what I thought. I thought it was still looming, but I can't remember what podcast I was listening to. And they just were talking about the player and the team fit, and I was like, is that what we're doing now? Just swiping stuff under the rug. So we like to have a moral compass on this podcast, so we'll raise those concerns when they see. But again, if it's just one of those where if they do bring him in, and I don't know, a little bit of likability factor, I don't think it'll probably have nothing but a positive impact on their actual play on the field. But all of a sudden you're like, Seahawks, I don't know. Like, again, whilst at the minute, I think they're again another team that are quite easy to like. Yeah,
no, utterly bizarre situation. I think it might have been the same pod that I was listening to. They were talking about John Schneider saying that if it had happened, if he was a Seahawks player, they would have cut him. But it's okay to go get him when he's been released from another team and add him to your roster. It's just weird.
Yeah, God knows.
Anyway, I don't know. 15 votes for over in our TSL WhatsApp group poll for the Seahawks, and 8 voted under.
Okay, so quite a few think, a bit of a regression there.
Now we head over to Arizona to discuss the Cardinals, and my one burning fantasy question for them is, what can we expect from Jeremiah Love as a rookie? Now, having traded him away, hopefully not a lot from my perspective, but obviously he's a massive talent. He's tipped for big things, and I'm sure he'll go on to make a serious difference in fantasy football, but I just don't like the initial setup that he's got with the Cardinals. They're not built to win right now. I know he's picked up an ankle sprain in training camp, and I just have this sense that we'll see him on the injury report a lot this season as he beds in, gets accustomed to life in the NFL. I also look at Tyler Algier and James Conner still being there in the running back room. I'm not suggesting either are going to sort of displace Love as the RB1 long term, but there is that threat there that they take opportunities away from him this year as a rookie, which is the question, and even the short yardage touchdown chances given how they operate. So that's the other concern I've got with him. But I do think we'll see a decent return for Love in his first year, but I just wouldn't expect too much. And hopefully my decision to trade him away for a 2027 first rounder and more in that 3-team deal that everyone was shocked by proves to be a sensible move. So how do you see Love faring in his rookie season?
It's an interesting one. So I had a quick look and just went back and sort of looked at how players got on in their rookie years. Saquon Barkley hit 385 points in 2018 with the Giants. I was like, what? And then Zeke Elliott hit 325 in 2016 with the Cowboys as well. So I was like, okay, so that they're obviously sort of dream world, again, 385 would just be, I don't know, mind-boggling if he got anywhere near that. But 325 is probably sort of, right, that might be your ceiling. But then I looked a bit more recently. So Robinson, Gibbs, and Gentry are probably the easiest comps. I think that they all kind of came out with, maybe not Gibbs, maybe not quite as highly regarded, but Robinson and Gentry probably a little bit more sort of similar profiles in terms of expectations for them. So rookie year, so Robinson hit 219, Gibbs hit 216, and Gentry hit 218. Respectively. So so I think Jeremiah Love's going to hit 217 because that's the only number that they didn't get in that run. But no, I think that's the sort of level you're obviously hoping for year one. And I think Love, sort of similar to Robinson and Gibbs, and particularly Robinson because of Algier obviously being there as well. I think he's, like you said, he's got other talented RBs on the roster. So I just don't think it's going to be quite the complete Love show, which I'm presuming it was for Saquon Barkley or whatever, right off the bat. So I think anything over 200 points, you're content with. Under that, you might be a little bit underwhelmed, just again because of the hype and everything. But I think he'll do a valid job at being RB1 and RB1 from this rookie class.
Jeremiah, I wish you the best. But just don't make me regret that decision.
Package up 4 of your first next year to get him back.
Can you imagine? Okay. So the over underline for the Cardinals is at a lowly 3.5. And sadly for their fans, I think I'm going to hit the under on this one with just 2 wins this season. Now, to go with the obvious problems with the roster, starting with quarterback Jacoby Brissett, Marvin Harrison, will he show up? Can Michael Wilson replicate what he did last season? I know Trey McBride will ball out, I'm sure, but there just isn't enough on that roster to convince me. And then listen to this, right? So we've got Chargers, Seahawks, 49ers to start the season. And then, Lord have mercy, they've got the Giants after that, which is just a nightmare situation. But then they've got the Lions, Rams, Broncos, Cowboys, Seahawks, Rams again, and then Chiefs. I mean, I think there's a serious chance that we could be staring at an 0-11 start or worse. So all the best to you, Cardinals. I really do mean that, but you're going to need it because I think at best you're looking at a 2-win season. So what have you got for Jack?
Yeah, that is an absolutely all-time minging schedule, that isn't it? That is rough. But I have gone for the over. I think for me, they won 8 games before last year. They obviously they won 3 last year, but had I think it was like a historic decimated injury squad. I think Brissett, I think he's serviceably okay. Again, I think he's not a great quarterback or anything like that, but I don't think he's a bad quarterback in any way. Love, maybe should be offensive rookie of the year. Wilson is good. Harrison should be good. McBride is otherworldly. Running back, they've got Algier and O'Connor. So, like, in terms of like weapons, like if you were to say, I don't know, if you gave me those weapons and said that was the Chargers' offensive weapons, I'd be a bit like, I fancy the Chargers to be a bit better this year. Like, again, if I just sort of comparing that unit to sort of, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of other teams where you're like, yeah, I don't know. I think that's a good unit. Like, I just think that is. I think obviously defense and things they've, got to show up there and again, sort of get over all these injury issues. But I don't know. Are they free wins or less bad? I just don't know. I can't say it. But like you said, that schedule again, where are those wins sort of coming from? I guess sort of towards the end, they've kind of got Raiders, Saints, Jets, Commanders. There's not many easy games there, sort of, because like when you're looking through it, you're sort of scraping at, will Chiefs be beaten? Well, I don't know, but where are they going to get them from? But I'm going to go for the over. Just, as I sort of say, schedule aside, I don't think they're a roster, again, like even compared to my, beloved Dolphins, I think, they're miles ahead of us. Not necessarily miles ahead, but they've definitely got a stronger roster overall, certainly for this year, as it were. And there is a world where a few things do come together and they can be decent. Obviously, new coaching setup and all the rest of it. We've got to see how that comes. But I think over 3.5 just felt a win or two too low for me, or a loss or two too low, I should say.
Fair play to you. You and the TSL crew have got more optimism than me, that's for sure, because 14 voted over and 9 voted under.
Oh, fair. Yeah, good. That makes me feel a bit better. I was a bit like, am I on an island here? But like you said, it is tough to see where those wins will come from. But I just don't think they're this garbage roster that maybe last year has maybe sort of made them out to be.
Are you sticking with Brissett then? You don't think we'll see Carson Beck at any stage this season?
No, again, I think Brissett's just a good middle of the road sort of quarterback. Again, unless he's injured or anything like that, I just don't think he's a big problem. Certainly for sort of a developing team or anything like that. Again, give Beck an opportunity to practice and have a year. Again, he's obviously not that highly touted. I know he obviously had a bit of showing out a little bit already pre-season, but I'd expect Brissett to be the starter all season if he's fit.
And then finally, our very last team in this segment, we've got the San Francisco 49ers. And my burning fantasy question for the Niners is, aside from who is actually going to be left still standing by the time the season starts, is Mike Evans bound for another 1,000-yard season? So let's just start by saying that this man is ridiculous, absolute legend. 11 consecutive seasons with over 1,000 yards until it came to an end in an injury-ravaged season last year. Only featured 8 times last year, so total 368 yards. It's a new start for him. He's left Tampa Bay, he's joined the 49ers, and it's a big if, now that off the back of last season, coupled with the fact that he's now 33, can he stay healthy and play a full season? I think he's got every chance of doing it in terms of the 1,000-yard season, not only because I'm confident Brock Purdy is just going to love his presence in that offense and he'll be his go-to guy, particularly when he's under pressure or in the red zone. And we've seen the ridiculous injury that the Niners continue to have. Ricky Pearsall out for the season. Christian Kirk struggling with a knock all throughout training camp. They've brought back Deebo Samuel. I wonder how much he will offer beyond a steady impact. George Kittle is obviously going to be massive for them. He's coming back from a serious injury, but he might be ready for week 1 by the looks of it. And then you've got the rookie, DeJuan Stribling, obviously getting a lot of pop, given where he went in the draft and how he's looked this summer. But Mike Evans, wide receiver 1, if he avoids injury, I can see him dominating on this offense. So I'm going, why the hell not? Let's do it, Big Mike. Another 1,000-yard season. What about you, Jet?
It'd be fun. It was one of my favourite moments. I hope I'm not misremembering this, but it must have obviously been the year before last season. But when he got to 1,000 yards, I'm sure he only just got over it. And it was like in the last game. And I've just got this vision of like Baker just giving him like this easy and him getting like crawling over. And I think he got like a £3 million bonus or something crazy. And it was like they were all laughing and like loving it and stuff. So I'm sure I remember that. So fair play. Obviously, sad to see him not be able to break, I think it would have been a record if he'd hit 12 last year. But I I don't share your optimism quite as much. I think he's going to be a good piece for the Niners. I really hope that we sort of get to see the best of him in a new situation. Obviously, it's going to be weird seeing him, obviously not with the Bucks and stuff. But I just think, yeah, unfortunately, he'll sort of go back to back with the sub 1,000. I mean, Niners game plan and sort of run game. Is he going to get the target share he needs? Appreciate, as you sort of said, obviously the injuries play into that favor. But again, can I see Evans playing 17 games? Probably not. Again, you don't like to sort of bank or predict necessarily on injuries, but I just given his age and career to date, I'd be shocked if he managed to play all the games. So again, taking maybe a couple missed games into consideration. Stribling seems to be the guy that might be the guy to be most excited about on the roster. I've heard it's called the Strib Club, isn't it? Which I quite like that. It's like a little fan thing. So yeah, sign me up for the Strib Club. I hope my missus doesn't hear me saying that. But yeah, he seems to be pushing it. But I think Evans is going to be a solid, spot starter for fantasy. But yeah, again, if he's your wide receiver 2, I think you're a little bit concerned. But sort of that flex option, I think he's strong in there. But I think he'll have a good year. But I think maybe the 1,000 yards is in his past, and maybe not something he's going to achieve again.
I mean, given no one can stay healthy on that roster, I don't know where my confidence has come from. So I'm not sure how I've gone for it, but yeah, we'll see. Hopefully he stays healthy. But the over-under line for the 49ers is at 9.5. And despite being in a ridiculously competitive division, I am hitting the over as I see them registering 10 wins looking at their schedule. Maybe one more at 11 if I'm feeling generous. But as always with this team, as we've mentioned, it's heavily dependent on how well they can avoid injuries. We've seen how badly that has impacted them in the past. But even still, when they've had injuries, they've still managed to find a way. The Kyle Shanahan factor of it all, but also all the veterans that they've got on that roster, they always seem to put together winning seasons, even with the setbacks. So I'm confident that they'll be up there with the Seahawks, behind the Rams in this division. It's going to be raining dubs in the NFC West, barring the poor Cardinals, in my opinion, at least anyway. But yeah, I went for the over here. What have you got?
I went for over as well. And again, it's one of those where I thought about it. I'm like, is it even possible for all these teams to hit over when I sort of worked it out and stuff? But yeah, I just don't see the Niners not being a double-digit team. I think, like I've sort of said with Philly and a few of the others, I put so much weight in sort of recent evidence and yeah, just quality of coaching setups and organization setups and things like that. So obviously their injury fortune, you'd hope, has to turn at some point. I think there's been some relatively good news on the sort of defensive with Bosa and if Warner's back and things like that. And yeah, Shanahan's right up there, isn't he, as one of the elite coaches. So I just fancy him to get him into double digits. So I couldn't bet on the under with them.
A real split on this one in our poll. We've got 11 votes for over and 10 votes for under.
Yeah, and again, I imagine, if it was a full healthy roster, then we'd probably be a bit closer to the Rams, or the betting line would be a lot higher, wouldn't it, and all the rest of it. So, I think that probably plays to people's sort of trepidations about the roster and who's actually on the field.
Very true. So that moving on to the next segment, and we're going to discuss our picks as the top contenders to win it all this season. And we'll go on to predict who will make the Super Bowl and who will ultimately be crowned champs at the end of the season in a minute, Jack. But let's just start with the contenders first. Let me hear your list of the top 5 teams that you see being the main contenders to be in with a shout of winning the Super Bowl in February.
Okay, so I'm just going to give you my list rather than sort of the reasoning straight away, because then you can kind of, compare it a little bit easier. So Rams, Seahawks, Broncos, Lions, Bills.
Nice. Okay, so a couple of the same as me, but some different ones. So my 5 top contenders for this season are as follows. I've got the Houston Texans and the LA Chargers from the AFC. And then I've got the Dallas Cowboys, although I'm a bit scared to give them too much credit after last week. So boo the Cowboys, but I think they will be in with the mix. And I've gone with the Detroit Lions as well. And of course, the LA Rams from the NFC.
So have you not got Seahawks?
No, not this time.
Interesting. What was the rationale there?
I just don't see them backing it up. And as we'll go through the next sort of parts of this segment, I've just gone all in on the Rams. Spoiler alert. But yeah, even though I did, like I say, with the Darnold of it all, that maybe he'll find the confidence and build on last season. I just can't see them performing at that level again 2 seasons in a row. Everyone always talks about how hard it is to go back to back, so I just don't see it with the Seahawks.
Yeah, I think, ultimately, whether or not I see them doing it entirely, people will find out shortly. But I think as a contender, I definitely think, again, I think they have a few positions that might be a bit weaker, but obviously, again, these dodgy signings might fix that. But just as a unit, I think, I imagine they'd improve. Again, it's another year altogether. It's another year Darnold in the system, and I appreciate QB's gone and things. So, and their defense is still elite. So, they were definitely one of the first ones I put down. I think them and Rams sort of were my locks as real contenders, and then it was sort of figure out the rest of them, really.
No, fair. Probably would have been on my list, I would have thought, when I was doing this exercise, but just didn't make that top 5 cut. The other one that you mentioned was the Bills, and no sort of expertise analysis of this at all. I simply ruled the Bills out because I've had enough of them. I just can't be asked to see Josh Allen fall short in the postseason again, so I'm not interested in having them in this bracket at all. I don't know, some of the other teams maybe then worth considering, like you said, then if I've missed out the Seahawks, but the Ravens kind of came into contention for me here as a dark horse. I don't know if they've got enough to go all the way as such, but I'm not sure. Patriots, Bengals, Broncos could all emerge from the AFC. From the NFC, Eagles, Bears, Seahawks, 49ers came into my consideration, all with a shout to get to the playoffs, of course, but none of them broke into that top 5 group for me. Was there anyone that kind of was there or thereabouts for you?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised. Patriots, again, I was trying to get them. So ultimately, I think the Lions schedule for me, that again, they weren't somebody right off the top of my head that came to mind, but I just think their schedule, that it just makes me feel like they could get themselves that bye in the first round. So if you get that, you kind of almost automatically a contender, aren't you? Because you're kind of coming in as one of the strongest teams in the league, and you've got the home advantage, and do you know what I mean, and all the rest of it. So that's probably why they came into my consideration. I think Bills, Patriots, and Texans I was sort of torn on, but ultimately, just the Bills, they have consistently had a top 5 offense, and I don't really see why that would change with the addition of DJ Moore. Again, if anything, I expect them to have that, and then their defensive game just has to match. So, like you sort of say, it's one of those where it feels like they've really kind of got to get over the line at some point. But when it comes to being a contender, when I think about the other teams, again, like Texans defense was almost enough to sway me, but then I was just like, actually, again, really good defense or a top 5 offense. Again, you kind of shake it out and then just put Josh Allen's name. I just sort of ultimately went for the Bills. I think Broncos for me, they hit 14 wins last year, which sort of tied their record for wins in a single season. They obviously beat Bills in that thriller in the division round, but then, lost Bo Nix. And they only lost that game 10-7 to the Patriots, which I think everyone kind of forgets. So they've basically got the same team. Waddle's a major addition. Vance Joseph and David Webb seem as good as sort of coordinators as you could possibly have. And Peyton's obviously entering his 4th year. So Broncos for me, they're sort of the team that I seem to be a lot higher on than a lot of people.
When you hear those stats, like the teams that win so many games, like by 1 score, and then the next season they tend to be on the flip side of that. I don't know why those things really just sort of stick in my brain. I'm convinced myself that's going to happen now. Then that's 100% just going to be the case with the Broncos. So I completely forgot about that scoreline, by the way, with the Patriots. It was closer than I thought,
and that was with no Bo Nix and stuff. And I do get that, because again, I think my analogy a few weeks ago when you're at a casino and it's sort of that it's got to turn one side. But I think the fact they were able to win that many and they weren't fully firing, they really got better at, their offense really improved sort of second half of the season and everything. And then, as I said, I think they haven't changed the roster really too much at all, other than adding a couple of extra pieces. So for me, they got those close wins this year, and those close wins will probably become, 3 to 5 point margins this year. Again, in my mind, that's how I sort of see them kind of going.
Some of the responses from the TSL gang then. James said the Rams, Bills, Broncos, Seahawks, and Bears are his 5 contenders.
Bears, shout.
Yeah. Marcos went with the Bills, Rams, Eagles, Broncos, and Cowboys. Rob, apologies, Rob, said Rams, Bills, Lions, Cowboys, and Seahawks. Dan went with the Rams, Seahawks, Broncos, Texans, and Cowboys. This was an interesting one from Luke. He said the Bengals, Rams, Chargers, Eagles, and the Chiefs. He thinks the Chiefs will be there. And then finally, Ollie went with the Rams, Eagles, Texans, Broncos, and Patriots. So a lot of the same teams across the board there, but there were a couple of interesting ones, as I sort of alluded to there, the Chiefs being one of them. Do you think much of the Chiefs this season?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think when we did our sort of little preview of them, I sort of highlighted that, again, just repeat myself a lot here, but like Mahomes, Andy Reid, again, the value that those guys bring. Again, if Rice can be on the field, Kenneth Walker should bring a lot and such. So it seems silly to sort of rule them out just after one particularly bad season, but I do think there might be not a slow climb, but I think that there is a climb that needs to be made for them to kind of get back in ahead of those other teams. So I don't quite see them this year, but again, it just wouldn't surprise you or wouldn't shock you, would you, if they're right back up there. And I think a couple of the others there that we mentioned, Bengals, I really wanted to say, because I think, we've alluded to sort of Joe Burrow and our sort of love for him sort of thing. So yeah, I'd love them to be there, but I just think there's maybe a few too many holes on their roster. And Chargers, yeah, I don't know. Again, I feel like they kind of need to kind of get past the first round, kind of get themselves a bit like the Broncos did or whatever last year, kind of get yourself through a round or two, and then you'll be a real contender. I still think at this stage we need to see that before I put them ahead of some of these other teams.
Well, I've got the Chargers advancing quite the way through, Jack, so we'll get to that in a minute. So having picked out your contenders then, who have you got advancing to the Super Bowl from the AFC and NFC respectively?
Yeah, so for Super Bowl, I've got Rams v Broncos. I think because of what I've said, I've gone for the Broncos and then Rams, who I've not been shy saying, I'm expecting an all-time year. So yeah, that's my current Super Bowl that I've got written down.
I have gone for the Houston Texans, emerging from the AFC, destroying Justin Herbert and the Chargers in the AFC Championship game. And
be a fresh matchup, wouldn't it be?
Exactly. Yeah, it'd be fun. And I think, like you mentioned, it's large part down to their defense. I think that unit can carry them, win some close games. And I know we've raised question marks about the offense, CJ Stroud, but I just think that they'll do enough on that side. I know Jaden Higgins' injury is a blow as well. You're hoping Tank Dell can get back to the sort of level he was previously. Kayshon Boutte's been added, which we'll touch on shortly. But yeah, I think the Texans' defense is going to be a major factor in helping them make the Super Bowl. And I just feel it's going to be one of those years where you just see that serious matchup between a really good defense and a really dangerous offense in the Super Bowl. So let's see if they can do that. So that's the AFC. And then I've got the Los Angeles Rams winning the NFC Championship game in an absolutely thrilling shootout against Detroit Lions. I would love to see that in the NFC Championship game. I think it would just be such a brilliant game to watch. You mentioned it earlier. It's the obvious pick, I guess, but you can't ignore them. You Stafford, the offense, the tandem Garrett, Donald leading that defense potentially. How are you stopping them and the rest of that unit if you're the rest of the NFC? So I don't think any other team is built to keep up with the Rams and go with them in that way.
Yeah, good shout. And yeah, they said that'd be a great Super Bowl. And like you said, Rams Lions could be an all-timer as well, couldn't it, in terms of a thriller? So I'm obviously with you there, having Rams in my Super Bowl as well.
Going back to our TSL WhatsApp group, then James said it will be Rams versus Broncos. And you've also got another one because Marcos has gone for a Broncos-Rams matchup as well. So everyone's seeing it from your side. Rob is going for the Bills versus Rams. Dan believes it will be the Texans versus the Rams. Luke has gone with the Eagles versus the Bengals, which will be an interesting one if they both make it through. And finally, Ollie envisages it as a Texans versus Eagles Super Bowl. So a couple of Eagles picks there to make the Super Bowl.
Yeah, Eagles are definitely, again, I think when we spoke about them and such, definitely a team for me that are right up there and amongst it sort of thing. And yeah, probably not the sort of team you want to face. When it gets to playoff time and stuff. So, interesting to hear them come up a couple of times.
Let's fast forward to the Super Bowl 61, SoFi Stadium, February 14th. Absolute treat for Valentine's Day. I mean, what could anyone's other half ask for? Staying up late, watching greatest show on earth. Romance isn't dead, of course, but Who have you got lifting the Lombardi Trophy next year, Jack?
I don't think it will surprise anybody, but yeah, Rams for me. It's, as much as I feel Broncos have a lot going for them. Yeah, as I sort of said, mega team, coached by arguably the best coach currently in football. I could just, Darnold's won Defensive Player of the Year. Nakua's won Offensive Player of the Year. Darnold, Garrett just absolutely obliterate Knicks into a million pieces in sort of the Super Bowl. I've got to go Rams.
It's 2-2 because I've also got the Rams to win it. Home turf, stage will be set. As you say, Stafford, Nakua, Adams, the gang, Donald coming back, embracing Garrett as the confetti falls. I just think it's that storyline that we're going to see this season. The Rams going to win it all for me as well. So we are in agreement on that. And then in the TSL WhatsApp group, James has gone for the Broncos and Marcos agrees with him.
Yeah.
Rob has the Rams winning it all. Dan has gone for the Texans. Luke believes it will be the Bengals, and I love that for Joe Burrow, but that is it's going to be one shock if it does happen. And to round things off, Ollie has gone with the Eagles, which would also shock me.
Yeah. Fair. I feel bad jumping off the Broncos bandwagon when the other two stuck with them. I feel like I need to get on that and make a trio for the year. So, again, it'll... it's interesting. There's lots of elite teams, aren't there, and stuff. It's just I like it when there's quite fresh matchups, and there's again, it's really fun. I always think when you kind of get that. Maybe it's not bad if it's in the Super Bowl, but you kind of say you get that Lions Rams absolute offensive thriller, in sort of the divisional and such, and then you come through and then you've got an offensively more of a defensive team, maybe against Broncos. I think just that contrast of styles, and it kind of gives you all the beauty of the sport and stuff sort of all wrapped up and such. So again, it'll be good to see which of us are right.
It's obviously going to be me. I can't wait to win our pick and pool and then our playoffs bracket predictions. So I'm looking forward to all of that.
It'll make being rock bottom on the fantasy a bit easier for you to take.
Exactly. Give me something, for God's sake. Right. Okay. So a quick NFL news recap to wrap up this episode of the TSL podcast then. So lots of injury news, unfortunately, Jack, but we're going to go into all of that in our season preview next week as we start looking at matchups across the TSL network in a bit more detail. But I guess the big talking points start with Deshaun Watson. He got booed by the Browns fans in pre-season. He then hit out at them in a press conference shortly after. And then after all that, it didn't really matter because then he got named QB1 for Cleveland at the start of the season. He did apologise for his comments, but just the whole thing just seems like such a clown show to me. Like, I'm sure if he performs well and the Browns start winning some games, the fickle nature of sports, I don't know, will some, not all, but they may brush it to the side and just enjoy seeing winning football. I don't know, despite what he's done in the past. But I don't know, like even with Shedeur Sanders, it just none of it convinces me that they're capable of doing well. Watson's been out for so long. And just I loved him at the Texans. I thought he was such an exciting dual threat quarterback, but the creep that he's been by all accounts, and just the guy can't roll back the clock and sort of get back to what he was before. So as a non-Browns fan, I say it's intriguing viewing, but it's just utterly bizarre to me.
Yeah, I think he's never really seemed overly sincere or sort of apologized for his actions. And again, I don't know. Yeah, it's one of those where I think people, maybe the Browns, again, I don't want to sort of stereotype or sort of comment that it definitely was happening, but I think when they signed him, sort of people were perhaps maybe a bit more willing to overlook it all and kind of get behind him, obviously hoping he was going to be this top 5 QB that he'd sort of shown glimpses of at Texans. But now he's crap. It's just like nobody likes him. Like nobody wants him. And just as the organization, I know there's been a lot of investment. I know that they've obviously blown a portion of their, certainly a number of years and a load of money and all the rest of it. But there's so much there that is almost going in the right way now with all these young sort of rookies coming on, or young players sort of ascending players and everything like that. It's almost like, why put yourselves through it and put the fans through that awkward position of sort of having to choose whether or not they can enjoy watching their team or not? Like, just if you just cut him, Shedeur Sanders or whoever, they're not great or anything, but again, whilst they have some sort of character traits people might not like, they're not going to stop you cheering on your team sort of territory. So, do you know what I mean? It just at least give the fans an opportunity to be excited and really kind of go behind what's. I imagine that there's Browns fans, that might be reluctant, that live there, that don't go to games because they morally can't kind of get behind him and things like that. So it's just a really, at this stage, for me, it's just weird because, again, even if he's slightly better than Sanders, it's not worth it. And again, I think any hope of him being a particularly good quarterback, like you said, are long gone, because we've seen for years now that he's way below that. So, for him, for the team, it's almost like just sail off, mate. You've got your money. It's sort of, for them, you've been stung for doing something that you probably shouldn't have done in the first place, and just let everyone move on. But most importantly, let the fans kind of get to a better place.
Couldn't agree more, mate. Couldn't agree more. So elsewhere, Raiders head coach Clint Kubiak still isn't naming his starting quarterback, so we'll keep an eye on who emerges from that. Ravens wide receiver Rashad Bateman was arrested in relation to family violence charges, according to ESPN. So this happened back in June. Don't know what action the NFL or the Ravens might take once the case is concluded, but we are an NFL fantasy football podcast, so sort of looking at it through that lens, we've seen a lot of hype around Jacoby Lane through training camp. And again, I'll mention it for the 100th time because I have to take my wins when I can. I did draft him back in June or whenever it was we did our draft, so he is on my roster.
Did you pick him after I picked him? Am I right in saying? Is that...
No. Don't take it. Don't take that one away from me. I was on the Lane train a long time ago. Zay Flowers, obviously wide receiver 1 for Lamar Jackson still, but if you invested in Jacoby Lane stock, you have to like the potential returns right now.
Yeah, I mean, yes. It's all pointed to, an all-time, Puka Nacua type season, isn't it? So rookie year, that's what I'm definitely holding out for. So, again, obviously it's lining up for him. There's a few concerns there in terms of, obviously, if he is literally the only target. I think Mark Andrews is getting some pretty bad reports just in terms of Father Time catching up on him. And, obviously Bateman does miss any time and stuff. Sort of. Again, I like Flowers. I've really tried to get him in my redraft. He's just one of those where he's not an exciting, I don't know, he's not like an exciting player, but he's so consistent. He's so he just gets his numbers every week sort of territory. So him and Lane, all of a sudden, I think that could be, it could be quite exciting to watch for the Ravens.
I always find Zay Flowers fascinating and weird in the same time because he always seemed to be available on the boards in previous leagues that we were in. And like you say, he's not one of those names that you see there and you're like, yep, done. Definitely Zay Flowers, no doubt about it. You sort of have to look, is there anyone better? Or, is he definitely the best option? But like I say, he does deliver. He does score consistently well.
Yeah, he just, as I said, he just doesn't really let you down in any way, does he? He's one of those players that you're always there. So I think I was trying to get him in my redraft. So I'm just having a quick look. So he went 4.9. So I was trying to get him there. So I had to take Devontae Adams at 4.11. And you're like, God, I'd way rather Flowers over Adams. I mean, it's like you just sort of look at his sort of the numbers and everything that he sort of delivers. And I just don't, again, I don't know if we've even spoken about him before on the podcast. He just doesn't get that conversation, to sort of say, again, he's not amazing or anything like that, but he's just solid wide receiver, isn't he? So, it'll be, I think the Ravens, they're definitely one of the more intriguing teams to see how things look there.
Other standout acquisitions over the past week include the Colts signing Keenan Allen, Giants add Najee Harris to their backfield, and the Texans signed Kayshon Boutte, as we mentioned earlier. All three are solid signings for me, Jack. I think Allen adds a different dimension to that Colts offense, especially with Alec Pierce and his injury issue. Harris, obviously, he's not a massively flash running back. He's solid with the Steelers before injury ruined the season with the Chargers last year. But Cam Scatterboo, clear RB1, but perhaps Harris slots in alongside Tyrone Tracy, Devin Singletary. If Scatterboo picks up another injury, then it changes that sort of landscape there. And I think importantly, from sort of more of a Giants perspective here, he offers pass protection for Jackson Dart. I think he's very good in that area of the game as well. So I think that's maybe where Harbaugh has seen what he likes in him and has added him to the roster. So I don't hate the move. I think it's a good one. But I think the really important one here in terms of their aspirations this season is the Texans in particular, because we spoke about the loss of Higgins, the pressure on Stroud. You give him another weapon in Boutte. who did show flashes with the Patriots. He didn't pull up trees. He wasn't particularly special in any sense, but I thought he did well with them. So I think that's a really clever addition. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I think they moved obviously pretty quickly, didn't they? You know, getting for Higgins, who there was obviously high hopes for this year, but he's just a good player. He was at sort of 39 receiving yards per game across sort of 14 games. I think he got 550 or so in total, 6 touchdowns. You know, that's contribution. You know, that's sort of the value. The trade seemed a little low for someone that could offer obviously some sort of AJ Brown insurance, I think, but at the same time, it's felt like Butte was always going to leave, isn't it? It's been talk all off season for him and stuff. So, yeah, fantasy wise, I think deep leagues, Butte is, you know, well, late sort of round pickup, or I just grabbed him off the waiver actually. So, if you've got a bit of roster space, I think he's worth picking up just as a bit of insurance. But he's just one of them. Sometimes it's nice not having a player like him on your roster because it's that. Do I start him? Don't I start him? You don't start him. He goes off for 18 points. You start him, he gets 2 points, and then you don't start him. And it's sort of like that. I feel like there's players in the league, and he's maybe one of them where you're just constantly, it causes you more stress than you need in your life because you're like, is this the week to start him or not? Something. But yeah, I think for the Texans again, it's a decent pickup.
I think that is a wrap on this episode of the Sunday League podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Please give this episode a like or leave a positive review if you've enjoyed it. Please also subscribe and spread the word far and wide to help us grow the channel with our first season covering things now rapidly approaching. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And you can follow us across all social media at Sunday League NFL. If you're a first-time listener or you're still thinking about joining a league next year and you want to get involved in our community of NFL fantasy football fans based in the UK, please email us at sundayleaguenfl@gmail.com. Please also reach out on that email address or on our social media accounts to join our 2026 pick and pool. If you think you have what it takes to out-predict everyone in the TSL network and win some money, let us know and we'll get you added to the pool. Jack, any final thoughts before we sign off this week?
No, that's it. I think, yeah, as you sort of say, again, even like with Genty and stuff, the closer we get, the more you kind of hope there isn't news or sort of any breaking news or injury news and all the rest of it, because it's it's nearly go time. So exciting stuff. And obviously hopefully we'll have a better week as a Spurs fan this week, and you know, my enthusiasm for sport will increase.
Fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed. Can only get better from last week. So please do go back and check out our positional rankings, all of our burning fantasy questions, and all of our predictions in previous episodes. As I said, the new season is now fast approaching. We will have football back in our lives very, very soon. And I hope you'll come on this TSL journey with us for the upcoming season and beyond. But that is it from us for now. Thank you for listening to the Sunday League UK NFL podcast, and we'll catch you next week.